Okay, so welcome everybody. This is the third student session that we're holding on behalf of Sandipur Watan. And my name is Michael Pazinas. I'm an Apple Professional Learning Specialist, and I'm just going to be introducing this session. I'm not going to be running it. We have an expert running the session today, and I'll hand over to that expert shortly. And just as a reminder, that we're focusing on 4 different areas today. Sorry, 5 different areas, not today, but obviously with your app prototype. So we're looking at quality education, and these are all from the Sustainable Development Goals: quality education, affordable and clean energy, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, and climate change. And these are very important areas for the UN. And I think they're very important areas for everybody in the world, looking at making sure that we actually work towards a habitable planet in the future. So thank you very much for focusing on those. Remember, you need to focus on one of those for your app. Okay. All right. Let's have a look at this now. What are we expecting from you? Okay, so if you want to understand with regards to the task submission, you need to make sure that you are working and delivering on all the activities that are in the learning management system that has been provided for you. That's the LMS that we've referred to and we've set up for everybody so that you can work through those. And you need to design and build an application prototype and submit it. So that will be one of the things that you deliver. You also need to create and submit a 3-minute video. I think the slides have gone a bit weird, iOS design team. Yeah, okay. So you need to create and submit a 3-minute pitch video, and you need to make sure that you attend all the guest sessions as well, because the guest sessions are going to give you extra information to help you with your app design. And it's really, really important that you complete your tasks in the app journal. Now, what does that translate to? If you do that, then that translates to points. And the more points you have, the more likelihood is that you'll get shortlisted, because we'll know that you've actually gone through the process of delivering what you have promised us. And so by going through this process, you're going to have a better app quality, app prototype quality, and that's what we're asking for. A couple of questions here, not very relevant to this, but yes, I am British. That's what you're asking. I'm half British. Thank you very much. I grew up in the UK. Okay. In terms of the program timeline, we are now doing these expert sessions, and the expert sessions are, of course, happening right now. They're going to happen until March. So we've got a couple of expert sessions coming up, and you're going to submit your challenge in April, and we'll communicate the exact dates when, and then we're hopefully going to announce the winners for iOS Design 2024 in May, which means that you will then move on to the Swift Accelerator program if you are winners. Okay. Now, that means that we've got another 2 sessions left for students, another 2 guest speaker sessions. We have one at the end of this month, which is on accessibility. And they all run, well, apart from the last one, they run about the same time. So 5:30 to 7, and then we're going to Ramadan timings for the last one. And so accessibility is going to be session 4. And then the last session will be about pitching your solution. So how do you pitch your solution will be the last thing. Now, what we've got here for you are a couple of videos that we want to show you from students that have, maybe it's your video, from students that have submitted some of which is one of the actual activities that you have to do in the LMS. So we've got a couple of videos here, and we want to show you some really great examples of things that students have sent in. Okay, take it away, videos. Sorry, iOS design team, we can't hear your sounds. Might have to do a new reshare. Your sound's off. Yeah, Salma, you have to do a 3-minute pitch video. Yeah. No, we can't hear it. Okay, that sounds really that sounds really good.
Balance between the use of natural resources, preserving the environment, allowing current and future generations to benefit from them.
There is some music attached to these. Unfortunately, it's not coming through right now. That's one of them. And that was shared on social media. And
for a greener, more sustainable future. As world population increases, so does pollution, environmental stress, and resource depletion, as well as health issues, habitat destruction, and insufficient access to basic services. Hence, the United Nations introduced SDG Goals 11 and 12 to help tackle such outcomes. Goal 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, aims to guide cities towards sustainable practices such as recycling, community events, and use of eco-friendly transportation. 12, Responsible Consumption and Production involves tracking our carbon footprints, conscious choices in shopping, and reusing waste. Over 300 global companies are moving towards 100% renewable energy. Schools and universities often organize eco-awareness programs. Let's not forget the COP28 recently held in UAE and the bottle recycling machines, as well as international events such as Earth Day or World Environment Day. By making conscious choices, we contribute to a world that is resilient, inclusive, and environmentally friendly. Let's continue this #SDG challenge together.
So these are some really great videos that we've already been sent regarding the challenge. So hopefully you're going to create more of those, and we can really give out that message to people that need to understand all of these problems and challenges that we have with making sure that we move towards a greener planet. Now, what do the winners of iOS Design Challenge get? We've talked about this before. The least important prize is the Mac. They get a new Mac, and we've had some kids actually publish apps this year. We recently had a celebration of kids that went through the Swift Accelerator. We had a great celebration, and it was we had lots of kids that were really produced some really great work. The most important stuff is 180 hours of coding instruction and the project work that you get with that machine. And you get design and coding resources. You get the opportunity to pass the Apple Pro level certification that is delivered through Certicore, the organization that delivers the official Apple exams. And we had unprecedented results with that. They were absolutely amazing results that we got there, unprecedented for the region. And we were really, really impressed. And you also get the opportunity, of course, to publish an app on the App Store. So hopefully you'll be publishing your apps if you win through, and you get, we had quite a few apps. I think we had about 40 to 50 app submissions from the groups that went through the cohort last year. So that's really great work. Okay, so we move on to the next slide. And if you have any issues with your LMS, make sure that you contact the iOS design team to help you. This is the address, the website, sorry, the email address that you need, so iosdesign@salwatan.ae. So if you need that, then you have issues logging in, please do that. Okay. Okay, so today's session is based on UX UI, and we're really, really lucky today to have YJ Soon from us from Singapore. And YJ is just out of out of interest, actually runs the Swift Accelerator program. He's he's a coder. He's a certified trainer, app development with Swift, and he knows all about Swift UI and also the user interface design that we need when we're producing these apps. So I'm going to hand over to YJ. Thank you very much, YJ, for taking the session on.
Thank you, Michael. Let me just switch over to my slides. Just a quick note. I know some of you were looking forward to I think our friend Hanan from last round. I'm afraid she had something that caused her to be unable to make it at the last minute. So I'm afraid that it's English only for this. We do apologize for the last minute change, but yeah, let's try and make the most of this. All right. Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is YJ. I'm back with this session to introduce you to UI UX. All right. I will try and keep an eye on the Q&A. So if you have questions, please let us know in the Q&A. I do ask for your patience in the Q&A because there are a lot of questions. We haven't had time to get to all of them. So, you know, I just need your help to, yeah, please be patient. We will try to answer everyone's questions. In particular, if anyone needs me to repeat anything, please let me know and I will try to do so. Okay. All right. So let's get started. We're talking about UI UX. Just a quick recap about the iOS Design Challenge. Your job is to create an app prototype. Okay, you're supposed to create an app prototype, which means that you don't actually need to code your app, but you do need to design it. And in the last session, I went through a little bit about using the Figma app to design it. But you can use any app that you like. Some people enjoy prototyping in pen and paper. Some people like Canva, right? Not Canvas. Canvas is the LMS. And some people just like using, you know, Photoshop or PowerPoint or even Keynote to do prototyping. All right. So if you missed that last session, it's available on the YouTube channel for the iOS Design Challenge. You just need to go to the website for iosdesign.ae and click on YouTube, and you should be able to find the video from the last round. All right. So what we're doing today is about general principles and about user interface and user experience design. All right. So so I won't be doing anything. I won't be demonstrating anything about actually how to design icons or screens, but I will show you a lot of examples and I will give you a bunch of resources, and we will make these slides available in the LMS after the fact, and you can take a look at them if you want to review anything. Of course, this video will also be recorded, and we will take some questions at the end of the session. Okay, so let's get going. So these are some of the things we're going to go through. First thing are some design principles. Okay, things to consider when designing an app. And there's something I'm going to keep mentioning throughout this talk, and that's the Human Interface Guidelines by Apple. All right, so I'm going to click on this link right here. I'm not going to send you the link in the chat or anything. I just need you to Google for Human Interface Guidelines by Apple, and you're going to end up at this site. Okay, just search for Apple Human Interface Guidelines. And this site right here is essentially how Apple is recommending you design your apps. This is the iOS Design Challenge. iOS is, of course, an operating system for the iPhone, and the iPhone is produced by Apple. So what's going to be useful is if you enjoy reading about design, if you enjoy, you know, figuring out how Apple makes their apps, I think you might enjoy just reading this website. In today's session, I'm going to be distilling some of the information from this website, and I will try and help you make apps that feel better, that work well with iOS. Okay, so on that note, there are some design principles that I'm going to go through, and the three that I'm going to go through are layout, color and contrast, and typography. So let's get started. Over here, you see on screen, this is layout. Layout is essentially putting things on screen. And as you can see, I have a terrible example. Layout means that you need to ensure that your user interface elements are arranged in a way that makes sense. Definitely not like this. So layout refers to how you put things on screen. I see that some of you in the Q&A say that you've started on your prototype, which is fantastic. You might want to spend some time discussing them with your team to just figure out, does this thing go here? Does this thing go there? Let's try and figure out which thing goes where and what makes sense. If you've used a lot of apps, you might have a good intuition for what goes where. However, this takes a lot of practice. So I don't blame you if you design something and your users are confused, but the key thing is you need to try it out with different people. Okay, so you need to have a very effective layout to provide a good user experience. Here are some things to think about. You should ask yourself, what is most important to my user? If you are making an app that is to play music, well, when the user opens the app, what do they want to do? They want to play music. So you shouldn't spend time asking them to read through lyrics. You shouldn't spend time asking them to read about maybe an artist's history or news. You should give them access to their music. So on the phone screen, you only have very little space. All right, so all of you, some of you might be on your computers right now. Some of you might be on your phones. Those of you on your phones, you know that there's not much space. You can't see very much. So you only have a limited amount of space to put your UI elements. You can't put everything on one screen. So this is where you might want to think, where does a plus button go? Where does a cancel button go? So these are all things you need to think about. But the key thing to think about is, what is most important to my user? And you also need to think, will this work on the user's device? For this challenge, I think it's okay if you just design for one device, but if you ever build real apps, you're going to need to think about building an app that works on a small screen, like the iPhone SE, to the biggest screen, the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And iPad, if you want to support iPad, landscape orientation, if you want to support it. So these are essentially different things you might need to think about in terms of layout. There are some sites out there that will help you with this. There's this site called Mobbin, M-O-B-B-I-N, where you can actually browse the site and take a look at how different apps do certain things. So if in your app, you need a sign-up screen, you can actually go to Mobbin, sign up for an account, and you can browse to see how does the sign-up screen look like in, the Uber app? How does the sign-up screen look like in the Careem app? And all the other apps that are available all over the world. Okay, so it's always good to learn from what other people have done. Here are some best practices from the Human Interface Guidelines. It's important for you to design a consistent layout. So I'll come back to these. I'll give you some actionable tips at the end of this session that you can just follow and try and take note of them. Okay, so make essential information easy to find. Use alignment to ease visual scanning. And consider providing visual hints to help discover content. All right, so I'm going to give you an example of how we can improve a design. All right, and this was something done by my student. Okay, so he came up with a terrible version of an app and a slightly better version of an app. He came up with this during the pandemic, and this was, just 2 to 3 years ago. And we were discussing what sort of features might a pandemic app have. Okay, so over here in Singapore, we had a contact tracing app. You had to download this app, and before you go into a shopping mall, you have to show your vaccination status. You can check where you've been during the day. Hopefully all this sounds familiar and is not too unpleasant to think about, because it was, it's been a while. Okay, so these are some of the features that we wanted to implement in our app prototype. We wanted to let people do contact tracing. We wanted to let people show their vaccination status and show their identity. So this is what we came up with the very first time. And it looks okay. All right, it looks okay. It is an app where you have all the features that we promised. You can check into a place. Over here in Singapore, to check into a venue, you have to scan a QR code, right? But during the pandemic. And there are, it's got a history of where you've been. It's got, some information about the devices nearby and things like that. However, it does look a little cluttered, which means that there's a lot of things on the same screen. All right. When the user opens the app, initially they will be struggling to find the feature that is most important to them. And perhaps that could be checking in, because before you enter a building, you have to check into that building. All right. So it's functional. And after a while, users will get used to it and they'll probably be able to navigate it quickly. But it can be better. So I'd like you to keep this design in mind. Okay, just keep this design in mind, because I'm going to move on to the next slide to show you a slightly improved version. Okay, so keep this design in mind. You can take a screenshot if you want to. I'm going to move to the next screen in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. And this is what we came up with as a slightly better home screen. All right. So one of the things that you need to show people when you walk into some buildings is that you are vaccinated. So we made that very obvious at the top of the app. It's a nice bright green color, and it's something that has great value to the user, because they can just open the app, show it to someone, and they will know that you are vaccinated. And we removed a lot of different elements, and we moved them away to, you can see at the bottom of the screen, these little things in the tab bar down here. Okay, so at the bottom of my screen. So don't be afraid of leaving some white space. Okay, just letting the user have a bit more breathing room. You don't have to pack everything into the same screen. Okay, so this is just one example. Let's move on. So that was all about layout. Let's move on to color. And I apologize in advance, because these next sections are going to be very bright. I'm so sorry for hurting your eyes. Okay, so we all love a splash of color, but we don't want you to use color like this. This is very annoying. Also, I can see that I've turned red, which is great because it's the Lunar New Year over here, and red is a lucky color. Moving on. So colors convey mood. All right, so if you use certain colors in your app, your users will subconsciously feel certain ways. So for example, red might be speed, efficiency, passion, power. Yellow could be cheerful and warm. Green is harmonious and balanced. Blue is trust and calmness. And purple speaks of luxury and power and wealth. So colors are a very important part of your app's functionality. If you use color properly, you can highlight important information to your user. So for example, if you see in the bottom right-hand corner, there are 2 buttons. There's one that says delete and one that says cancel. The delete button is in red, and this is in English, so they put the delete button on the right-hand side. In Arabic, I think they might swap it around, because Arabic is a right-to-left language. But the red button signifies that it's something that is destructive. If you press it, something will go wrong. So you need to tell the user that. Colors also support your branding. So you've probably seen all these Office apps before. You can probably identify exactly which of them is the word processor, which of them is the spreadsheet app, and which of them is the presentation app. Okay, because you know that Word and Google Docs are blue. You know that Excel and Google Sheets are green. But PowerPoint is red and Google Slides is yellow. But all of these are very distinct colors. These are all things that really help create an identity for your app. Okay, so in your iOS apps, you see this as well. Notes is yellow, calendar is red, and messages are blue. So I'd like you to think about this. When you first start designing apps, you might think, oh, I just want all the colors. I want to make it nice and bright and make it a really happy place. But it might help to have a consistent color scheme. Okay, it might help to have a consistent color scheme, a color that your app depends on. What then if you need more colors than the single one? Well, you can look up colors that go well together. You can use color harmonies. There's a website called Adobe Color. Again, I'm going to rely on you to Google for this, and it can generate very nice color schemes for you to get started. These are all backed by research. Finally, don't overuse your colors. Okay, I apologize for this screen, but don't use too many colors. Don't use too many gradients. Done wrongly, it just looks really tacky and gross. You strain your users' eyes and you annoy them, just like I'm annoying you with this slide right now. Okay, so let's look at one more example. This is a food delivery app. Okay, we called it Grab Panda, right? Because over here we have a ride-hailing app called Grab and a food delivery app called Food Panda. So we put them together, Grab Panda. Please do not grab any pandas. So you can see over here that it doesn't look quite right. It's a ride-hailing app and it's saying that we want to go from one place to another. You can see that there are 2 locations. Okay, so this is like your Uber and Careem. And you can see that it's got it's got a booking button at the bottom. All right, so that's our first version. So the colors just don't go well together. It's hard to tell what is interactive. It's hard to tell what is clickable. More colors don't make for a better user interface. Let's see what it looks like if you redesign it a little bit. Okay, so over here, green is now our primary tint color. And some things are tappable, some things are not. And it's got a very clear brand color that's green. And it uses red and blue as additional accent colors. Okay, so colors are very important. You can see from the previous slide that didn't look very good, right? We couldn't tell what didn't look good. But when you see it done properly, right, you can hopefully tell that it's actually a little bit better. Okay, one more thing. Colors is important for accessibility. I think many of you here are young, you're all in high school, and you probably have pretty good vision. And just be aware that there are people out there who aren't able to see as well. Be mindful of color choices that are harder to see. So if you're like me, I'm middle-aged, I would say, all right, I'm beginning to have some difficulty telling some colors apart. And contrast is one of those things. As you can see, some of the text on screen is very difficult to see, right? So contrast is very important. Contrast means how well you can distinguish things from the things behind them. You can see that the left panda is very hard to tell. The left panda word is very hard to tell. The right panda word is a bit easier to tell because the left one is light text on light background. The right one is light text on a dark background. Okay, so contrast will also highlight the importance. It can establish a content hierarchy. You can see on the left-hand side that my bold title and a gray subtitle, these two, you can tell which one is more important. On the right-hand side, we just have a bold title and a not bold subtitle, and it's actually harder to tell, right? So you can see that it's a lot harder to tell the difference between which one is more important. And all that was different between these two is just color, contrast, okay? One other thing, you can use contrast to create different sections of your app. So if you ever used an iPad in dark mode, if you use the Mail app, you might notice that there are 3 panels. There's a list of accounts, there's a list of messages, and then there's the message itself. And they have slightly different colors. Contrast that with the example on the right, where all of them are the same color. And that's a lot harder to tell which one is which. Okay. All right, I have one more example to show you, and this one is called Panda News. So Panda News is a news app about pandas. Okay. The problem with pandas is that they are black and they are white. All right. So if you want to put text over a panda, it's very difficult because if you use white text, you can't see it because part of the panda is white. If you use black text, you can't see it because part of the panda is black. Okay, silly pandas. difficult color schemes. How can you solve this? Here's one technique. You can darken or lighten the image to ensure that the text remains readable. Okay, so it's important to test out your designs. This is a simple little technique. If you're working in Figma, you just need to create a new layer, put it underneath the text, make it semi-transparent, make it black, and reduce the transparency. And you can improve the contrast above your image. All right. So what is the right contrast? Well, you can usually tell, or you can ask around. And that's one thing that's very important in design. It's getting feedback. Okay, so if any of you might have, elderly parents or elderly relatives, show them your design. Ask them, is there anything that I can do to improve this for a user like you? Okay, so you don't have to make sure everything has maximum contrast. Just make sure you test it out. Okay, so that's colors and contrast. One more section inside this part. That's about typography. Typography is about fonts and how to use them and how not to use them. In iOS, there's a bunch of system fonts. They are called the San Francisco family, right? SF, right? Because Apple's in California, the nearest big city is San Francisco. So they named the font after it. Okay, so these are some of the San Francisco fonts that you might see in iOS. And you can see over here, there's a few more. Some of them are slightly bigger. Some of them are slightly smaller. Some of them are for official use only. There's one in the bottom right-hand corner that I'm not actually supposed to use in this slide. Don't tell them. So here's a recommendation. When you are building your app, you might be tempted to use all kinds of different and interesting and cool-looking fonts. I ask you to take a look at the apps that are already installed on your device and see how many of them actually use custom fonts. Many apps just use the default system font. Now, if you are designing this on Figma on the web, you might not have access to Apple's SF font. So it's okay. Just use a simple sans serif font. So it could be Arial, it could be Helvetica, something simple. You can see the font on screen right now is called Helvetica. It looks very simple, but it does its job very well. Big companies will tend to use their own fonts, but even then, their fonts are very understated. That means that they don't stand out very much. They look good. They are easy to read. Stick to one or two fonts. You might want to say, okay, well, maybe I'll stick to the system font, but I'll have a different header font. Maybe if my links are a different font, things will look awful after a while. So what we tell you is, try to just use a couple of fonts and you should be good to go. What can you do though if you want to have some variance? Well, you could change up your font weights. Okay, so you can see over here, these are two different designs with two different font weights. And the top one, these are both normal fonts. This one is a bold font, so you can tell that it's more important. Okay, over here, I varied the font on my name. So my name is YJ, right? And because, some of you might know in Chinese names, right, the surname actually shows up before the first name and things like that. So I want to highlight which one is my first name. So over here, I put, I made that in bold. Okay. All right. So essentially, if you end up with an app like this, okay, so here's a chat app, for example, and if you see too many fonts, it's very difficult for someone to focus. All right, if you see too many fonts, it's just very confusing for you. It's just very difficult to focus. And it would help if you just made things a bit more consistent. So let's take a look at what a consistent one might look like. Okay, so you just vary the font size of the sender and the message. Okay, so the word panda is bigger than the actual message. And you use one consistent font to make things look a bit more professional. Okay, and that's the first part of our talk which is about layout, colors, and fonts. All right, so I'm going to pause right here and take a look at the questions. Thank you all for your questions. And once again, I do need to seek your understanding. If your question's not being answered, there's a very good chance that we are trying to figure it out. There's also a good chance that my colleague, who's Alex behind the scenes, is trying very hard to answer all of them as best as she can. So please be patient. We will try our best to help you. Okay. So let me just take a look at some of the questions on screen. All right. Yes, there was a Rickroll. I'm very sorry about that. There's a question here that asks, all right, do we need to use Swift for the app prototype? You might see Swift reference somewhere in my slides. All right. You do not, right? You do not need to use Swift. And to answer any other questions, you do not need to do any coding for the iOS design challenge itself. It is, after all, a design challenge. Okay, so I hope that helps answer the question. If you manage to get through to the next segment, which is the Swift Accelerator program, that's when the name should give it away. You're going to do a lot of Swift. And that's when you're going to learn how to program and actually bring your app designs to life in iOS. All right. Okay, so let me just quickly go through some of these questions real quick. All right. There's a question about if we don't need to code, why is there a coder as a role for the member? I think the aim of this entire challenge is to just give you a sense of how a team might work. Okay, so there might not be a real coder in your team, but if there is, this person might come with a different perspective. This person might actually be able to tell you some things aren't possible, some things are better done a certain way, and some things are better done another way. Okay, so it's more of a mindset rather than an actual role. All right, so hopefully that helps answer your question. All right, let me just try and get a few more. Why did I get Rickrolled? I'm very sorry. I shouldn't answer that. What software should you use? You might have missed the part earlier where I mentioned that for the design segment, we have a short tutorial on Figma, but you can use anything you want. Okay, you can use Keynote. Some people use Keynote to create their prototypes. It's actually pretty great. It works really well, especially for if you're on an iPad. But you can actually go ahead and use anything you want. Some people draw very nice prototypes. That's okay too. All right, so let me take a look at, so can we use any app? Yes, you can, right? And do you need to stay until 7 or can you leave? If you need to leave, I should mention that this entire meeting is being recorded. So you can go ahead and head off if there's something that you need to go for, right? If your parents are yelling at you to go for dinner, please don't blame me for it. Please go ahead and you can catch up with the recording afterwards. We will try to get the recording up on the YouTube channel by the end of the week. Okay, so I hope that helps. All right. There are a bunch of questions about submissions and things like that, and also a bunch of questions about the LMS, right? That's not quite related to UI UX, but I think it's important that we talk about those. The LMS is the Learning Management System. If you registered on the website anytime before, I think, Monday this week, or yeah, I think around Monday this week, you should have received an invitation to the Learning Management System. If you haven't, please drop us an email. We will put up the slide on what email to send to at the end of the session one more time, or you can just go to the iosdesign.ae website and drop us an email there. There is a very good chance that we have sent your invitation and it got lost in the mail. We have been resending the invitations on a weekly basis. So if you just need to search for LMS somewhere in your email, and it might be there. Okay, so we seek your patience. Once again, just like everything, we seek your patience. There are many emails for us to go through. There are many people who haven't received the invitations. Please, we seek your patience and we will try to help you out. Okay, so the LMS invite is an email. The LMS is not an email, but the LMS invite is provided through an email. You will get a link and you need to click on that link to register for our course. That's where you will get all the data about how you submit, what to submit, everything. Okay. All right. So I will try my best to answer some questions, but I think that's let's move on. Right, let's move on. I promise to get to your questions again afterwards. All right. So next up, iOS navigation patterns. So I think some of you use iOS on a daily basis. So I do. I've been using iOS since the iPhone first came out, and I've also tried other mobile platforms, but I'm most familiar with iOS. What's really interesting though is that there are parts of iOS that are just so intuitive by now. I've used it so often that I know exactly how to do certain things without thinking about them. For example, I know that if I want to navigate backwards, I can tap on the back button in the top left-hand corner of my app, or I can swipe from the left edge of my screen. Now, all this stuff is second nature to some of us because I think all of you especially, you've grown up with the mobile phones, right? The iPhone came out about 14 or 15 years ago, and some of you are, younger than that. Some of you are about that age. So you've grown up with these devices, and these might come as second nature to you. I don't know if you've ever paused to think about how they work, because now your job is to design an app. Your job is not to use an app. Your job is to design an app. And it's not as straightforward as you might think. There are certain things that you just open an app, you know exactly how to use it. But if you were asked to design it, these might not be the first ideas that come to your mind. So in this section, I am going to quickly go through some iOS navigation patterns. This is actually something that's part of a field called information architecture. It sounds very, very daunting, architecture, right? But it's all about how you put things on screen, how you present information to your users. There are professional user interface and user experience designers out there who just do this all day. You tell them, I want an app that, lets the user play music, and they will figure out what text goes where, what icons go where, what screens show up first, and how to have you navigate through an app. When an app is well designed, when navigation is well designed, when it's intuitive, it's very easy not to notice. All right, and I hope you will all aim for that. So I'm going to introduce 3 different elements of navigation to you. All right, the first are tab bars, followed by navigation views, and finally, modal sheets. Okay, so I don't know if these terms are new to you, but hopefully by looking at them, you can kind of tell what they do. I want to emphasize one more time that all this is on the Apple's Human Interface Guidelines website. All right, it's a fantastic document. I know some of you are fantastic designers or budding designers, and this is really interesting for you. I ask you to be the person in your team that reads through it and shares it with your team. But for now, I'm just going to do a quick summary. So a tab bar is something that shows up at the bottom of your app. All right, it's on iOS, it's on iPadOS, it's even on Android, right? I think Android apps have these as well. Okay, each tab focuses on one way to interact with the app. Okay, so the one that I have on screen is the health. I don't know how many of you use the health app, but it's got 3 sections. The first section is a summary. It shows the most important parts of your health you want to focus on. For me, that would be my weight. I'm trying to keep my weight down. And, it's the Lunar New Year. I've been eating a lot. So every day I'll check back in. I'll weigh myself. I'll check back in and see my progress. Next is sharing. This is a section that lets me share my health data with my wife, for example, and she will notice that I have gained weight and she will tell me not to eat too many Lunar New Year snacks. Nobody tell her. And the last one is browse. Browse will let me look at all available health data. And that's one way that you can see every single piece of data. You'll notice that none of these sections will actually navigate to the other. Okay, the summary never navigates to sharing. Sharing never navigates to browse, but they all provide different aspects of the same information, right? The same app. Okay, so that's something to think about. If you have an app where there are multiple aspects, you might want to consider having a tab bar. Another example I can think of is the clock app. The clock app has the world clock, it's got alarms, it's got timers, and something else I cannot remember, right? I think an actual clock. Okay, so these are all different aspects of the same app. Another app with tab bars is App Store. App Store has games. App Store has all App Store has your purchases, and App Store has Apple Arcade. So many different ways of looking at the same data from your app. All right, so that's what tab bars are for. So I want you to think about, like your app. You have a unique app that you have in mind. You're going to think through it. You're going to work through a design journal. And I'd like you to think, is there space for a tab bar? If there isn't, that's okay. But if there is, it might make sense to think about. Here are some guidelines for tab bars. Balance features throughout tabs. Try not to duplicate features, right? So one tab shouldn't go to another. Think of it again like your favorite social media apps. Your social media apps, a lot of them have tab bars. I think you might use WhatsApp. WhatsApp has a chats tab. It's got a status tab. It's got a settings tab. None of these actually lead to one another, but they're all very important for WhatsApp. Okay, use clear and concise labels. Tabs shouldn't navigate to one another. And keep the tab bar accessible throughout the app. Some apps will hide the tab bar, but people find this a bit strange. Unless you have a good reason to do it, right? Then just make sure it's there throughout. All right, so that is about tab bars. That was 1. 2, navigation views or navigation bars. These are the things that show up at the top of your screen. I have a little video over here to show you, right? If you tap on this, you notice that it kind of drills down, okay? And you can tap on the back button or swipe from the left edge of the screen to go back. These are commonly used in apps with multiple levels of information. This app on screen is settings. And in settings, you might want to go into general, where you might want to go into about, you might want to go into iCloud and all kinds of things. You just have a hierarchy of information. Okay, so if that describes your app, you might actually need a navigation view. Okay, so for left to right languages like English, the navigation views will go left to right. And I personally don't use my phone in Arabic, but I understand Arabic is a right to left language. It will go the other direction because this direction is the natural forward direction for that language. Okay, so if anyone here uses your phone by default on Arabic, I think you might have a different experience from what I just showed on screen, where if you drill down deeper on an English language phone, it will go from left to right. But on Arabic, it might go right to left. Okay, so there's a sense of, it's a deck of cards where you push something on to the next thing on top. And then if you go to the next screen, it pushes something else on top. And then you push more things on top. And when you go back, it slides it off and you can see the screen behind it. So if your app sounds like this, you might want to consider having a navigation view. Okay, notice how navigation views work. There's a big little title at the top. And let me play this video one more time. Every time you tap on it, the title goes up to the top and the previous screen's title shows up in the back button. Okay, so if that sounds like your app, then maybe you can consider having a navigation view. Because where can you find navigation views in iOS? Well, navigation views are in App Store, Wallet, Home, Photos, Health, Settings, Messages, Reminders, Contacts, WhatsApp. They are everywhere. There are navigation views everywhere in your app. Okay, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but now that I mentioned them, I hope you take a look at your apps and see where they show up. There's a dead giveaway, which is usually the big title at the top of the screen. And when you scroll, the content will go underneath the title. Okay, so you can try it out. So again, let me show you another example, like calendar. So in the calendar app, the user taps to go into more detail about the date, right? So the year view, followed by the month view, followed by the day view, and the back button will show the last view that keeps the user anchored so they know where they are and they know how to get back to the previous screen. All right. So some guidelines. Again, these are all adapted from Apple's Human Interface Guidelines because, it's a fantastic site. Please go there. So when you put up a navigation view, please provide a descriptive and concise title. You can hide it for an immersive experience, like in Photos. Photos has a navigation view, but if you tap on the photo, it'll become full screen because people like to see their photos full screen. Okay, but you can just swipe down to close the full screen view. There's a standard back button in the navigation bar, and the users are accustomed to seeing this in the top left-hand corner. So try not to move that, just leave it as it is. There are some apps, I know the PlayStation app. Okay, so I have a PlayStation. So I launched the PlayStation app, and they moved the back button to the bottom left-hand corner, and it annoys me every single time. And I just get so angry using the app, you know. It's just like I put my finger in the top left-hand corner to go back, but no, it's not there. And I have to move my finger down by 3 cm, and it makes me crazy. Sorry, I'll calm down now. I hope I didn't scare anyone. Okay, but anyway, the idea here is that the navigation bar, right? If people are used to it, try and give people what they're used to. Okay, so that's navigation views. Finally, what's a sheet? A modal sheet. Let me show you. All right, a modal sheet is something that slides in from the bottom and takes over the entire screen. All right, let's take a look. So it contains a task, like for example, over here, create a new contact. You cannot exit this create new contact sheet until you're done. Either you consciously press cancel, in which case it will confirm it with you, or you press done, in which case it will save the contact for you. Let me play that again. Okay, so this is the contacts app. You press plus, it pulls up a sheet. It doesn't let you do anything else with the app. Your access is blocked. You cannot tap on any other user. You cannot even navigate back without unconsciously. All right. So it's one of those things where you use it for a self-contained task. All right. You want the user to consciously save or cancel in order to proceed. So they cannot go anywhere until they either give you what you want or back off. All right. So that's the general idea behind a modal sheet. Let me show you another one. So the clock app, right? When you press the plus button in the world clock, you add a new city. Okay. And this usually pops up, and there's a little bit of a space in between that and the top bar. You can actually pull down to cancel, right? But again, it's a very conscious action. You have to pull down. You can't just accidentally tap your way out of it because you don't want to annoy your user. All right. Okay. Because the worst thing that could happen is your user fills in some information, and then they accidentally tap somewhere outside the screen, and it dismisses, and they lose all their information. They'll get very angry at you, very angry. Okay, so we don't want that. All right, so you try to reduce your users' potential sources of frustration. All right, similarly for the alarm app, you tap on the plus button to add a new alarm. Okay, you can fill in the alarm details. You can either cancel or save. Both of these are conscious actions that you must take. All right, so if you find yourself needing to let your user add something, this might be a good case for you to create a modal sheet. Okay, so this is called a modal sheet. It shows up from the bottom of the screen. Some people call these pop-ups on the web, right? There will be a pop-up that shows up. All right, so that's the end of my second section, which is about iOS navigation patterns. Let's go to the comments and questions. Let's take a look. I see 145 open questions. I promise to at least answer 3. Right. Okay, so let me try and answer the ones that are a bit more topical that have to do with UI UX. Okay, so Arwa asks, is it the same for Android devices? Actually, no. Android has its own set of guidelines. All right. I'm not super familiar with them, but if you're interested, I mean, not for this challenge, I guess. This challenge is iOS Design Challenge. But if you're interested, you can look up this thing called Material Design Guidelines. So, you know, they have their own set of guidelines, which I don't know in as much detail as I do the Apple ones. Okay, so hope that helps. All right, so let me just search for a few more questions that have to do with the design. All right. Okay, so what is Swift? It's been mentioned many times. All right, so there's a question from Suravan or Jayesh. And Swift is a programming language made to use the apps on iOS. We are not learning or teaching Swift in this course. Okay, you do not need to program your apps. You just need to create a prototype. It can be done as an animation. It can be done as a video, something that can demonstrate how your app will work. And that's sufficient. Okay, so I just want to emphasize that one more time. All right. Let's see if there's anything else. Let's see if there's any more related questions. What is the HIG? Okay, so Jess asks, what's the HIG? That's a very good question because I'm going to keep mentioning it. The HIG are Apple's Human Interface Guidelines. All right, so you can just actually Google for them, and I'm just going to show you my Safari screen. This right here is Apple's website on the Human Interface Guidelines. Let me just quickly show you, right? This is new, of course. This is designing for the Vision Pro, the Apple Vision Pro, right? But the more interesting stuff will be the foundations, where you can talk about things like branding, color, and things like that. So this is the color section. This is where I got some of the tips and tricks that I told you about just now. All right. But there's a lot, right? And a lot of it is backed by research. These are professionals who spend all their time doing user interface design or user experience design. Okay. So I hope that helps explain what this is. It's a fantastic site if you are into this kind of thing. If you're not, maybe one of your teammates is, and they can read through it and help, improve your app designs. All right, so that's a very good question. Thank you, Jess. All right, let's see if there's any more questions about the topic. All right, I know there are a lot of questions about iOS Design Challenge. If there's time at the end, I'll try and get through some of these. Okay, but yeah. Oh, here's a question from Rafe. Do we have to make our app basically using iOS navigation? Okay, so some of you might be like, oh yeah, I've designed my app, but it looks nothing like this, right? We're not using the navigation bars, we're not using tab bars, we're not using modal sheets. Does this mean my app's no good, right? It's not going to do well? Not necessarily the case. Okay, so just to make it clear, you can design the app any way you want. All right, there are many different criteria for judging your app. Of course, it's got to do with the ideas, it's got to do with your implementation, it's got to do with your presentation, it's got to do with your video. All right. We are not here to find people who can make exact apps that look exactly like Apple iOS apps. But you know what? If you can use these principles, they might be able to help improve your app. Okay, so you don't have to make it exactly like iOS navigation, but it might help improve your app if you look through some of the principles and see whether it helps you. Okay. All right. Someone has a broken leg and has an appointment. Please go for your appointment. This session is recorded. Okay. Someone says, I have a broken leg. Please go take care of that. I'm yeah, so sorry. Okay. Okay, here's a good question. Should a prototype be completely functional? No. All right. The prototype should be able to showcase the functionality of your app. But if you say your app is going to have some amazing advanced AI, we are not going to make you program an amazing advanced AI for this challenge. Okay, so I think the aim is to make sure that your user can interact with your amazing advanced AI in an intuitive way. And of course, your app should meet the goals of the competition. All right. Okay, there's a question here that says, I don't have an iPhone. And that is a perfectly valid thing, right? I don't know. I don't actually know where the question went. I scrolled past it. You do not need an iPhone for this competition. Okay, you do not need an iPhone for this competition. And again, we're not expecting you to design, pixel perfect iPhone apps. This session is to just show you that, all these iPhone apps, if you have a chance to try them, right? If you have a chance to, drop by an Apple store, scroll through them, try them out. There are many things you can learn about making engaging, intuitive, and useful apps. Okay, so I just want to give that bit of reassurance on that. All right. Okay. All right. There's a question about there's an iOS design library on Figma that contains the design system. Yes, you can use that. I actually mentioned that in my Figma session. Okay, so you don't need to design your own icons. All right, you can use the iOS design library. If you're interested, you can take a look at my previous segment. Okay, so I think I'm just going to move on to the next section, right? This is the last long section, right? And after that, it's just a couple of short ones. So this one, I think, hopefully is really useful for you. These are just some do's and don'ts. Okay, so hopefully these are some things that you can keep in mind. All right, and these are actionable tips, things that you can refer to. You can, take some screenshots of these and refer to them as you are doing up your prototypes or reviewing your prototypes later on. Okay, and I'm just going to show pictures or videos of built-in apps on iPhone. I'm not even going to show third-party apps. These are all apps that were made by Apple. So first of all, just to reiterate what we just said, do use iOS navigation patterns, okay? If it makes sense for you, right? If you have different aspects of the same app, then you might consider a tab bar. All right, so I think that makes perfect sense. If you have different aspects of the same app, like this is the clock app. It's got a world clock, it's got an alarm, it's got a stopwatch, it's got a timer, and these are all different aspects of the same app. So a tab bar makes perfect sense. Okay. Other apps that do this will be Instagram, right? Instagram has a feed. Instagram has your notifications. It's got your settings. It's got your profile page, and it's got a plus button in the middle, right? In the tab bar for you to create. Actually, no, does it still have a plus button? I have no idea. I mean, I shouldn't pull up my Instagram in the middle of my segment, okay? But just look at existing apps, right? The key thing here is to look and try existing apps and see if you can learn from them. So that's one pattern, the tab bars. Navigation bars are for drilling down into different parts of the app. So settings is, of course, the one that you see this the most. Another example is the Mail app. In the Mail app, you will have a first screen where you have all your different accounts. You tap on it and you see all your different email or all your different folders. You tap on that, you see all the mail in that folder, and you tap on that and you see your actual email. Okay, so when you see your actual email, and you want to reply to it, that becomes a modal sheet, something that pops up and engages all your attention while you are doing it. All right, so that's a modal sheet. If you ever need to add something, if you ever need to create a new item in your app, if you ever need someone to reply, if you ever need someone to confirm something, you can use the modal sheet. Okay, so this is just a retread of what I literally just talked about in the last section. There's a few new ones coming up. Do provide clear navigation. Okay, so this is back to the very beginning when I asked you, if you want to make a music app, well, you definitely want to let your user press play very quickly and easily. So this is Apple's music app. If you want to press play, notice that there's a giant play button right in the middle of the screen. Okay, so right here, if you can see my cursor. Okay, there's also a play button down here in case you are looking down at the bottom of your screen. If you want to choose a different song, and this is a Snow Patrol, love them. All right, you can tap on it and it will start playing. All these are different ways for the user to accomplish their goals. Okay, you don't have to dumb down your interface. You don't need to have giant labels that say, press here, this is what you want to press. You can assume that your user is intelligent. But you can also assume that your user doesn't want to spend too much time finding things on the screen. Right? Intelligent, but busy. All right. So over here, if you look at this screen, even if you've never used Apple Music before, and I know many of you might use Spotify or other platforms, you should hopefully be able to tell how to shuffle. You should hopefully be able to tell how to go back. You should be able to tell how to go to a search, right? Because there's a search button in the tab bar. Okay, and you should be able to tell how to shuffle your music, right? All these are very intuitive just by looking at this. So it looks like a very simple app, but there's a lot of thought that went into it to provide very clear navigation. Here's something else, all right? Do give visual feedback. Okay, so this is a video, right? So over here, all right, so what happened in this video is that I tapped on certain parts of the screen. Right? I tapped on the plus button first, and it brought up the new event. Then I tapped on cancel, and it immediately went away. Then I tapped on search, and it brought up a search box, which is great. It all feels very fluid and intuitive. Can you imagine if you press the plus button and nothing happens? What would you do? You probably press it again, right? And I think you might have encountered websites that behave like this, where you press a submit button, nothing shows up. So this is especially bad when you're trying to do online shopping, right? You press the submit button, you put the thing into your cart, you submitted your parents' credit card information, you press submit, and nothing happens. That's the worst possible thing that can happen to you, because now you're like, should I press submit again? Will they charge me twice? It's super annoying. So it's very important to give clear, informative feedback to your user. so that they can achieve their goals with confidence. It's kind of like an elevator button, right? You walk into an elevator, you press it, doesn't light up, you're going to press it again. Okay, so try and give your user feedback. How does that manifest itself in a prototype? Well, when you have your user tap on something, it should light up. Okay, so you might need a different screen to show that your button has lit up. All right, it's a bit of extra effort, but I think it could really help your user interface feel more fluid and more natural. I will take this animation off screen now. Here's one thing that's interesting. Don't make your users regret mistakes. Okay, so I'm sure you've come across some websites where you fill in the form, fill in like, 10 rows of forms, and then you accidentally, and it comes up in this like little box in the middle of the screen, and you accidentally click outside, you click right here. And what happens? The entire box disappears. All your form data is gone, and your user gets super, super annoyed, right? You're like, oh no, I have to fill everything up again. Why does this keep happening to me? That kind of thing, all right? Same thing applies on mobile, and it's even worse on mobile because it's even harder to type, okay? So don't make your users regret mistakes. Be forgiving. And you know what? If they accidentally click on something, like if they accidentally try to buy something, provide a clear emergency exit, right, to prevent any unwanted action. All right, so provide users with the right direction, provide them with the right path as much as possible, but keep in mind that your users will make mistakes. All right, so that's one thing to think about. This is the App Store. Do embrace the familiar. Okay, this one is something that that I do need to remind some folks, and it's up to you whether it makes sense for your app. Okay, if possible, try and use icons and symbols that iOS users are familiar with. Okay, so you see I've put up a bunch of icons on this screen. This icon over here, top right-hand corner, that's the share button, right? It's very strange. It's it's like a rectangle with an arrow popping out of it. But if you use iOS for long enough, you see it and you intuitively know that that means to share. Okay, some apps will use a different icon. And when you see those apps, after a while, you might figure it out. But if it doesn't make sense, there's just a bit of cognitive dissonance. It's just something that, just bothers you a little bit. Okay. Apple has an entire set of icons that are free to use. However, it might not be easy for you to access them. So don't worry about using those exact icons, but try to use icons that make sense. And you can test them out with users, try them out yourself, see whether it makes sense to you. Don't do something different just for the sake of being different. That's it. There are cases when you might want to not use the system font or use the system icons. If you're making a colorful game for kids, well, I think then you might want to have different fonts, like a more light-hearted font. You might want to have colorful icons to attract the kids' attention. That is perfectly valid. Okay, so it really depends on what app you want to build. And I hope that all of you are thinking very hard about your audience when you design your apps. Similarly, don't be inconsistent. Okay, don't be inconsistent. So I've been to Dubai twice, right? So I haven't taken much of the public transport, right? But so it's here in Singapore. We have we're a very small country. We have a whole bunch of metro lines. We call them subway lines, right? And they're color coded. Okay, imagine if you live in such a city and one day the yellow line suddenly became purple for no reason, right? That would be really confusing, right? That would be really inconsistent and really confusing. So having consistent visuals, consistent colors will let users learn from the system quickly and have a very smooth experience. All right. So over here, you can see that if you swipe left on an email, right, you will see a bunch of different icons pop up. And you will see that, archive is purple, flag is red, and more is gray. And it tries to stick to this color scheme throughout the entire app, right? They won't try and suddenly, in a different part of the app, archive is suddenly red. All right, so I hope that kind of makes sense. Next, provide a visual hierarchy. This is going back to the layout part that I talked about at the very beginning of this video, of this workshop. Okay, bigger and smaller. Some text is bigger, some text is smaller. Some text has higher contrast, some text has lower contrast. Some text uses primary colors, some text uses secondary colors. Same for images, okay? Figure out what you want to highlight and use the right tools to highlight them. Okay, so you draw attention to certain things. Like on this screen, this is the Books app on iPhone. It's drawing attention to the title of this book series called Develop in Swift. There we go, Swift again. All right, this is a free set of books from Apple. If you're interested, please download them. They're free to download, and you can learn them if you have a Mac. Okay, now the entire idea is that your eyes are drawn to the middle of the screen, and this big button in the middle, right? Continue reading. That's the main thing they want you to do. So they have a big button right in the middle of the screen, and it stands out from everything else. All this rest of the information is grouped together to show that they're together. Okay, so do provide a visual hierarchy. That means some things are bigger, some things are smaller, some things are more important, some things are less important. Do pay attention to alignment. Okay, and this is something that, you know, I think some of you are going to be very good about this. You're very neat, but maybe some of you will just, you know, place an item here, place an item here, place an item here, and just like plonk them all over the screen. Consider how you might want to align your elements. So this is the weather app. This is the weather in Singapore. Weather in Singapore is pretty much like this, somewhere between 27 to 35 degrees Celsius. And you can see in the forecast, right, there's all nicely aligned. Each of the icons, each of the cloud icons is aligned. Each of the today to the next few days is aligned. Each of the weather temperature icons are aligned. Okay, so it helps the user associate them with one another, and it makes your design neat and easy to scan. So if I were to try and find the weather for Friday, I would have an easy time by just scanning down the list. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much it for the do's and don'ts. All right, so let me just pause right here. I just have 2 more sections. They're very short. Let me just pause and take some questions. Where can we find these slides, right? We will try and put these slides on the LMS, yeah, as soon as, but the priority is to get the video onto YouTube. All right, so that's, all right. Is there any math included in UI UX? Not necessarily, but there are alignment, and I've seen people try to figure out the numbers. People are actually interested in what numbers show up between these elements. Okay, so some people have a certain number harmony. They only use powers of 2, so you can only use 16 here and 32 here for the spacing. There's a bit of math, but I think it's all like more intuition than actual equations and calculations. Okay. There's one question about there's a page where a camera shows up to scan an object, right? So and you know, how do you show that in Figma? Well, you're going to need to mock up a camera view. Okay, so so what you can do is you can take a picture of something and put a white circle somewhere on there, and you know, mock up your own camera view. Okay, so I think that's one way to think about how you might do a camera view. Okay. Let me see. Let me take a look at a few more. I'm just going to try and answer the ones that are more design related for now. Okay. And if we have time, we'll try and answer the competition related ones. Okay. Golden ratio. Yes. There's a question about the golden ratio. Yes, you can use that. If you're familiar with it, it's pretty much like a 1.4:1 ratio that makes things look good somehow. All right. I would say if I were on this screen, I would say there's a bit of a golden ratio between my location and the current the hourly predictions, as well, followed by the 10-day forecast. Okay, so yeah, if you know the golden ratio, you're good to go. Just try and use it, see whether it looks good to you. All right. So let me take a look. All right, let me see if I can figure out a few more design related ones. Okay. Okay, a lot of these are related to the competition, and please do not send in the question multiple times, right? That's not going to help your case. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, all right. There's a question that says, do you need to use navigation tags in your prototype? Not necessarily, only if it makes sense for you. Okay. Okay, so I think I've covered the design related stuff for now. Okay, I apologize if I missed your question, but there are a lot. There are 153 questions. I can't read that fast. Okay. here's some things you can do to improve your understanding of UI UX. Okay, so here's one thing you can try out, right? If you're free. I know you have busy student lives, and and Ramadan is coming up and everything. So I thoroughly understand if you don't have time for this, but this is optional. Please do not treat this in any way as an assignment that you must do. But this is what I ask my students to do to improve their understanding of user interface design. What you can do is you can clone a food delivery app. So here in Singapore, we have a food delivery app called Food Panda. I think they're active in Asia and Southeast Asia. So choose one of these screens, okay? Try to copy the entire interface using Figma. You'll be surprised at how much you learn, okay? Because when I tried to do that, I realized, hey, McDonald's over here, it's bold, but the thing underneath, it says, $2 signs, and it's fast food, halal, which means that these are categorizations. And then underneath, it shows the delivery fee. It's the same font size, but it's in bold. There's a lot of very interesting information that we just take for granted when we use our apps. Okay, so I think it's a fantastic thing to try out if you have the time. It really gives you a better understanding of the thought processes that goes into the original design, typography, layout, and color. Ask yourself things like, why did they put the text here? Why not there? Why did they make this image so large? Why is this text emphasized? How is it emphasized? Why is it emphasized? Okay, so I think there's quite a lot you can learn just by looking at a particularly busy app. All right, so I think good apps for this would be food delivery, ride hailing, all-in-one super apps there where they have to let you do a lot of different things, and I think those are really interesting. Okay, a second challenge you can think about is, instead of creating your own app, create a weather app. Okay, so think about what a weather app might look like. You saw a weather app just now, right? You saw the iOS weather app over here. Okay, very nice app. There's a lot of features in it, but the weather app is very different for different people around the world. Okay, so here in Singapore, I don't need to use a weather app to figure out whether I need a jacket outside, because it's either hot or raining, right? So I just need to look outside, and I just need to know when it's going to rain and whether it's going to rain. Should I bring my umbrella? Should I even go out? Okay, and I imagine in the UAE, you have a similar problem where you just need to know how hot it is outside, perhaps. I don't think rain is as big an issue. Okay, so how would a weather app be suitable for you, right? I know in the US, when I studied in the US, there are certain days where you just need to check whether it's cold. You need to bring a jacket, you need to bring 2 jackets, bring a sweater. It's a very different situation from, our countries. So I think it's interesting if you were to create a prototype for a weather app. This would let you think of a lot of things, right? And there are many interesting weather apps out there. You can go online and take a look at what they have, okay, and how they approach the same problems. Last section, resources, where to learn more. Can you guess the first resource I'm going to send to you? It starts with an H, all right? And that's the Apple Human Interface Guidelines, all right? I cannot stress this enough. This is where all of this information came from. I adapted this from various parts of the Apple HIG. You just need to go online, search for Apple HIG, and you can find out a lot more about how to design for iOS. Okay. There's also one more, which is the WWDC design videos. WWDC stands for the Worldwide Developer Conference. It's a conference that Apple runs every year in June, and that's where they announce the new versions of iOS and iPadOS. And last year, that's when they announced the Apple Vision Pro. Every year, they don't just do announcements, they also hold workshops. So they hold little sessions about different technical aspects. So last year, they held workshops about how to design for spatial computing for the Apple Vision Pro. Sometimes a lot of these are very technical, but sometimes there are some useful things inside there that are more about design. Okay, so if you just search for WWDC and design videos, right, you should be able to find a whole bunch of videos that might be interesting for you. I have a few recommendations on screen. These are the titles. You can just take a screenshot and you can search for them. And they are all very interesting if you are interested in UI design. Okay, and that brings me to the end of my session. Let me see if I have time. I think I have time with, yeah, it's almost 7, right? For me, it's 11 p.m. So I'm an old man and I'm very sleepy right now, but I will try my best to, I'll try my best to answer a few more. Okay. All right, there are a lot of questions about the MacBook. All right, let me answer some of the iOS challenge related questions. Okay. So for the MacBook, we will provide information to the winners when the time comes. Okay, I can't give you more information than that because we don't actually know when the Swift Accelerator program will begin but we know that it's after the conclusion of the iOS Design Challenge. And the iOS Design Challenge finishes sometime this academic year. Okay, so that's as best an answer I can provide on that. All right, so there's a question about hang on, I missed the question because you guys are sending in a lot of questions and I have no idea what's going on. Okay, so okay, there's a question about the LMS, right? So again, the LMS is the learning management system. If you don't have an invite to it, check your email, right? Search for the word LMS, see whether it shows up. There's anything that says you've been invited to the iOS Design Challenge LMS, because that will help. All right. But you can't check your student progress, but you can look through and see what you've submitted so far. All right, and we will take that as the progress through your course. Okay. All right. Hopefully that helps. Let me just go and take a look. Is HTML, CSS, JavaScript required for UI UX? No, you don't need to do any of that. But if you want to make your prototype in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, I am not stopping you. All right. Once again, there are many different ways to prototype an app. I know one of my colleagues uses Swift to prototype his apps. He thinks faster, he programs faster than he can design. So he actually uses a programming language to make his prototypes. That's perfectly fine. Okay, but that might not be you, right? Most of us think faster by drawing or designing rather than programming. Okay, so that's okay. All right, blah, blah, blah. So let me just try my best to answer a few more of this, okay? Okay, so this question is, if I win and I get a chance to publish an app, does it have to be the same one I won the competition with, or can it be any other app? We are open to you changing your idea after you get into the Swift Accelerator program. That is also partly because some apps that you dream up right now might not be 100% doable. That's okay. All right, try not to let that limit your imagination. We are looking for well-explained, well-executed, well-designed ideas. All right. So, but you are not obliged to implement that app because we have had folks in the last round, they designed something and they realized they ran into, technical limitations and they just couldn't do it. And it's okay. You can come up with something else. You can still try and publish an app. Okay. All right. I think, okay. All right. I think that's it for now. Okay. I don't have all right. If you have any other questions, please refer to the website. Once again, the website is at iosdesign.ae and you can take a look there. If it's a truly very urgent question, you can try emailing in. But once again, we seek your patience. We are unable to reply to everyone as as quickly as we would like. Even if you've registered very recently and you haven't managed to get invited, please hold on to your horses. We will try our very best to get everyone into the LMS as quickly as possible. Okay. All right. Okay. I think that's it from me. Let me just check in the chat to make sure that everything is okay. Okay, so I think we are done for the night. For me, it's nighttime, so I am afraid that I am an old person and I need to go to sleep because I need to wake up early to send my kids to school. It's been a pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with all of you, and I look forward to seeing what you submit for your challenges. All right, thanks everyone. Take care and good night.